He also said he plans to put a tariff on pharmaceuticals. Listen.
On pharmaceuticals, we'll be putting a initially small tariff on pharmaceuticals, but in 1 year,
President
1.5 years maximum, it's going to go to 150%.
President Donald Trump floated the idea of imposing a 200% tariff on pharmaceutical imports into the U.S. on Tuesday.
As of nearly 2 hours ago now, midnight in Washington, 9:30 a.m. in Delhi, most Indian goods imported into the U.S. face a 50% tariff.
America finds itself in a crisis unlike any it has faced in generations. Shelves in pharmacies that were once full of life-saving medicines now sit empty. Families travel from town to town searching for prescriptions that cannot be filled. Doctors stand helpless as they try to treat patients without the basic drugs they need. And in the center of it all is one explosive fact. India and China, the two giants that supply the majority of the world's medicines, have cut off shipments to the United States in response to Trump's sweeping tariffs. The fallout is nothing short of catastrophic. For decades, Americans believed that the nation's healthcare system was unshakable. We had the most advanced hospitals, the most celebrated doctors, and the most innovative pharmaceutical research. But what most people didn't realize was that behind the glossy image was a fragile truth. The United States was no longer the maker of its own medicines. More than 80% of active pharmaceutical ingredients, the chemical foundations of our drugs, were imported. China dominated the market for antibiotics, painkillers, and even the compounds used in chemotherapy. India became the world's largest supplier of generic medicines, exporting billions of pills to the U.S. every year. When Trump escalated his trade war, targeting imports with heavy tariffs, he believed he was defending American industry. But India and China saw an opening. Instead of bowing to pressure, they retaliated with a move that stunned Washington and shocked ordinary Americans. They restricted medicine exports to the United States. The result was immediate chaos. Picture this. A mother in Texas drives 2 hours to find antibiotics for her child's infection, only to be told that every pharmacy is out. A cancer patient in Ohio is informed that his chemotherapy treatment will be delayed because the hospital cannot obtain the drugs. Elderly patients in Florida line up outside pharmacies at dawn, hoping to grab whatever small supply might have trickled in overnight. These are not distant hypotheticals. These are the lived realities of millions of Americans in this moment. Trump's reaction was explosive. He lashed out in fiery speeches, accusing India and China of holding American lives hostage, calling it medical blackmail. But his fury could not change the fact that decades of outsourcing had left America vulnerable. Tariffs didn't cause this dependence. They revealed it. For years, pharmaceutical giants moved production overseas because it was cheaper and faster. U.S. regulators allowed it. Politicians ignored it. And now, America is paying the price. Economically, the consequences are staggering. With imports restricted, the cost of common medicines has skyrocketed. Drugs that once cost a few dollars now sell for hundreds. Insurance companies are overwhelmed, and families are being forced to make heartbreaking choices between buying food, paying rent, or filling a prescription. Hospitals are rationing supplies, choosing who gets treated today and who must wait until more drugs arrive. It is not an exaggeration to call this a collapse. The very foundation of America's pharmacy system is crumbling. Globally, the picture is even more complex. India has begun redirecting drug exports to Europe and Africa, strengthening its influence outside the United States. China, meanwhile, has deepened partnerships with Russia and Southeast Asia, securing markets that leave America isolated. Allies like Canada and Germany are already negotiating long-term deals with India to guarantee steady supplies. While Trump fumes, other nations adapt and move ahead, leaving the U.S. scrambling to catch up. The irony is bitter. America, once the leader in pharmaceutical innovation, is now begging for the very medicines it once exported. In the 20th century, U.S. factories were the backbone of global drug production. But over the years, cost-cutting, deregulation, and corporate greed hollowed out that strength. By the time Trump's tariffs hit, America no longer had the capacity to manufacture at scale. Rebuilding that ability will take years, maybe decades. But the crisis is here now. The political fallout is immense. Trump's supporters praise his toughness but quietly ask, why wasn't America prepared for this? Why were no stockpiles created to cushion against supply shocks? Why was a trade war launched without securing the most critical industry of all, healthcare? His opponents are merciless, accusing him of putting pride before patience, of gambling with American lives for political theater. The divide grows sharper with every missed prescription, every delayed treatment, every preventable death. But beyond politics lies a deeper question. What does national security mean in the 21st century? For decades, leaders measured power by the size of armies and the strength of economies. Yet this crisis shows that real security is also about medicine. What good is military strength if your citizens cannot access antibiotics? What good are fighter jets if cancer patients cannot get chemotherapy? India and China have demonstrated that pharmaceuticals are as powerful as oil or weapons, a tool of influence and leverage on the global stage. Inside America, the stories keep pouring in. A diabetic in California rationing insulin because the price doubled overnight. A veteran in Michigan unable to refill antidepressants. Families in rural towns turning to online black market pharmacies, risking counterfeit drugs because the legal system has failed them. Doctors in New York warning that infant mortality rates could rise if shortages continue. The pain is not abstract. It is human, it is real, and it is immediate. Meanwhile, corporations that once pushed for global supply chains are now in crisis mode. Pharmaceutical executives testify before Congress, warning of disaster while quietly lobbying for subsidies to rebuild U.S. production. Some announce plans to open small factories in America, but admit it will take 5 to 10 years before output meets demand. By then, how many lives will have been lost? America's allies watch closely. Canada moves quickly to secure deals with India, ensuring its citizens won't face the same shortages. The European Union launches a massive initiative to produce essential drugs domestically, determined never to be vulnerable again. In Japan, South Korea, and Australia, governments are pouring billions into pharmaceutical independence. The global lesson is clear. Never again rely on one or two nations for something as critical as medicine. But for the United States, that lesson comes at the cost of chaos. Tariffs that were meant to display strength have exposed weakness. A leader who promised to put America first has found his nation at the mercy of foreign suppliers. And as the crisis deepens, trust in government, in institutions, and in the promise of American abundance continues to erode. Will the U.S. recover? Yes, but only if it confronts the truth. For too long, cheap drugs from overseas masked the reality of dependence. For too long, profits outweighed preparedness. For too long, politicians ignored the warnings of experts who said America was vulnerable. Rebuilding pharmaceutical independence will take vision, investment, and cooperation. It will require rethinking not just healthcare, but the entire philosophy of globalization that led to this point. But let's dig even deeper into what this collapse really means for the American people. It's easy to talk in terms of billions of dollars and percentages of supply chains, but at the heart of this crisis are real stories of struggle and resilience. Imagine the family in rural Kentucky, where the nearest hospital already struggles with staff shortages, now told that antibiotics for their children will be delayed for weeks. Think of the elderly and retirement communities across Arizona, who depend on blood pressure medications every single day just to keep going, now left wondering whether the next refill will even arrive. This is not a distant warning. It's the reality playing out across the country. At the same time, the crisis exposes a truth about globalization that many Americans never wanted to face. For years, we were told that outsourcing was efficient, that global supply chains kept costs down, that interdependence meant stability. But today, that stability has been shattered. India and China now use medicines not just as exports, but as leverage, as tools of power. They have learned that in the modern world, dominance is not only about oil or steel or technology. It's about who controls the drugs that people cannot live without. That leverage gives them more influence over the US than any tariff negotiation could. Trump's explosive response only highlights the fragility of the situation. His speeches are fiery, his words are sharp, but words cannot fill empty pharmacy shelves. Anger cannot manufacture insulin. Fury cannot produce chemotherapy drugs overnight. The American people are beginning to realize that this isn't just a trade war, it's a war over life itself. And yet, in the middle of the chaos, some opportunities begin to emerge. Smaller biotech firms in the US are stepping forward, urging Washington to invest in domestic production. Universities are pushing for more research funding to develop alternative methods for creating essential drugs. Even governors, from both parties, are calling on federal leadership to treat pharmaceutical independence as a national security priority, not just a healthcare issue. If there is a silver lining, it is this. The crisis may finally force America to confront the cost of decades of neglect and make the bold changes that should have been made years ago. The question is, will it happen? Or will we look back on this moment as the turning point when America's pharmacy collapsed for good? Only time will tell. But one thing is certain. The decisions made in the coming months will define not just healthcare, but the very strength of the nation for generations to come. And to everyone watching right now, this story matters because it is about your life, your family, your future. The collapse of America's pharmacy is not just a headline. It's the reality shaping your everyday choices. And that's why we will continue to bring you the truth, to cut through the noise, and to show you what the mainstream refuses to. So if you want to stay informed, if you want to stay ahead, make sure you subscribe to Traveling Vibes right now. Together, we'll keep uncovering the stories that matter, the stories that shape the future, and the stories that hold those in power accountable. Because this crisis is not the end. It is only the beginning.